And welcome everybody to another episode of Pulse of Fins Nation. I am your host, Louis Sung. I am joined by my co-host, Ron Caniff, and Chris Early, otherwise known as Duke. How are you, gentlemen? How are we doing today?
Doing well.
I'm great. I'm excited to explain to everybody what it is that the Dolphins are doing on offense and why they're doing it.
Okay, so
new information that no one said before, only because it's a total and complete guess, but I think I'm right.
All right, so that's fine. Hey, listen, this is what this is all about. You told me to title this show something along these lines, that Mike McDaniel needs to make some changes to the offense.
No, you misunderstood me.
No, you told
I'm going
me.
to explain to you. You know what? I'm going to go through and find I'm going to skip. You keep talking, do your little promos.
You said
I'm gonna go through and find exactly what I said.
Something to the effect of why McDaniel is changing the offense.
I'm about facts here, so I'm going to read exactly what it was.
I
But you go ahead and do the promos.
I just read it to you.
I have to scroll through. Hold on
All right, fine, whatever. So for those of you who are watching, we'll have this argument just in a few minutes. But before that, really quick, for those of you who do not already know, make sure you go check out our good friends over at You Brake Wheel Fix. You Brake Wheel Fix is the complete automotive wheel solution. Ever parked too close to the sidewalk curb? You Brake Wheel Fix specializes in the repair of damaged wheels from bends, cracks, and curb rash. Or maybe your wheels are faded or peeling. You don't need to replace them, as You Brake Wheel Fix can refinish them to like new. Offering complete refinish options through powder coating, machining, and polishing, You Brake Wheel Fix is the answer to all of your wheel needs. And if you're just looking to give your ride a new look, You Brake Wheel Fix also offers many car customizing options, such as new custom wheels and tires from your favorite brands, performance upgrades, window tinting, and suspension modifications. Located just south of Aventura, you can reach Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112 or online at youbrakewheelfix.com. They are really active on all social media platforms at You Brake Wheel Fix, so shoot them a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Yes, Twitter, not X, Twitter, and get an estimate in just minutes. So don't delay. Go to You Brake Wheel Fix and start customizing your ride to show off your Dolphins fandom today. This show is also brought to you by PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues. Whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each, it's up to you to decide. Just choose whether your chosen player will get more or less in their projected stat. They give you free squares. Today is Taco Tuesday, which means that you are going to have discounted props all across the board. And they're also Flex Friday specials where you can get your money back if you lose, like I did last week, rather.
Like you do every single
Like it feels like I do every single week. That's what makes it so great. If I lose, they give me my money back, or they multiply the amount of money I can normally win. With offers like that, how can you justify not signing up if you are any kind of a fantasy sports fan? So use that promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Again, that's promo code 5, FIVE. Go to prizepicks.com, deposit your $100, and let PrizePicks give you $100 of their dollars for you to play with and get started winning today. All right, so once again, I did, like I said, I read it right off of our personal Discord for the 5 Reasons Sports Network. You said,
go ahead. I'm going to say it since I'm saying you're wrong.
Title it something to the effect of why McDaniel is changing the offense and that you have a monologue ready. So you said something to the effect. You did not specify exactly what I needed to write down.
I know, but I didn't say what he must. I said I was going to
something
explain
to
why.
The effect. I'm trying to come up with a good title.
All right, we're going to let Duke be the tiebreaker. Duke, based off what I said and what the title of this show is, do you think Lewis got it right or wrong?
I'm gonna play the fifth.
I didn't even say I was right. I just said you did not specify exactly what I should put.
So he doesn't incriminate Lewis for being wrong. Okay, here we go. All right. So before we get to the Falcons review, which I mean, if we're even going to get to that, I don't know. I'm going to ask you guys a question. So last year we were 9-8, made the playoffs, lost. Our goal, obviously, and we know that the team's goal was to at least win a playoff game. McDaniel spoke about that from the very beginning. He spoke about how this team, he couldn't believe that this team had gone so long without a playoff win, how hungry the fans were, etc. Why do you think that was? Like, what was the number one reason we fell short last year? If you had to pick one big reason.
Tua wasn't playing.
Okay. Tua wasn't playing. So when Tua wouldn't play, what would happen? What would happen when we put in backup quarterbacks? What would happen?
Stagnation.
Yeah, they couldn't run the offense. They couldn't run the offense because it was too specific to Tua and his skill set, right? Do we pretty much feel like Tua is likely, if we based off his history since college, right, is likely to probably miss time in games again? Do you think that if you're a smart coach, you're going to plan for that? Unless you're going to replace him, which clearly we didn't, and we're not at this point. Wouldn't you say, Lewis, unmute yourself? I'm asking you questions.
Listen, I've got DoorDash coming, and I don't want them knocking down my door while I'm on the show, so I need to keep muted when I'm not talking.
DoorDash coming? More important than this? Okay. So wouldn't you say, though, that – all right, if I can remember what question I was asking. The number one thing was when the backup quarterbacks came in, they couldn't run the offense because it was so specific to what Tua did well. So your choices are go get another quarterback, right, that can do exactly what Tua does and make him a backup. All right, that wasn't an option. There was no option for that back there. There's very few quarterbacks that can do well what Tua does, right? Even starting quarterbacks. Like there's a large group that could not come in and run the offense the way it was designed last year when Tua was playing. Or you change the offense, right? Now, does that mean that Miami is simply going to erase all the things that they could do with Waddle and Tyreek and Tua on the field last year? Absolutely not, because you'd be crazy to. It was really hard to stop, even though teams were starting to try and, run the Fangio, too high safety, all that stuff to stop it. It is still real hard to stop because those guys' skill sets are also just so high. But you need to be able to come in and do what San Fran has been able to do, right? And that is a quarterback goes out, another one comes in, and they can still run the offense. Why? Because it's shorter passes. It's number one, you're running the ball more. When you're running the ball more, number one, you're protecting your quarterback. But you're also helping your quarterbacks. If it's not Tua, if it's White, or if it's Skyler, you're helping those quarterbacks by, number one, running the ball more. So that's one thing we're going to be doing more of. But number two, throwing more short passes with Yak. And then another example of what we seem to be doing is we've seen all the reports, and this isn't just secret reports anymore. So we know that they've kind of split the wide receivers up in teams, quote unquote, almost, where Waddle kind of has his little group of receivers and Tyreek kind of has his little group, and they're almost like two little receiver teams. And we're really not seeing those guys on the field. Why? Because McDaniel no longer wants the offense to just solely be specific to players. He wants it to be specific to scheme and play calling and design. Now, we're not going to just completely eliminate the great things that we did last year. We won't, trust me. And when they need to pull those out of the bag, they will absolutely do that. When the time is right, they're going to do it. When Rocky needed to go ahead and switch back to being a southpaw in the middle of the fight to confuse his opponent, he did that. But for the most part, we're learning to fight right-handed, right? If you will, like Rocky, we're gonna fight right-handed, even though we're left-handed, because that's how we're gonna protect ourselves. We're gonna protect ourselves by having an offense that's a bit more like what San Fran was doing, more yak, shorter passes, more running the ball. And I know that it looks a little ugly right now. There was moments last year where it was looking ugly when they were learning this offense. I mean, I know they would get their big shots in practice, but that wasn't really because of the offense. That was more because of the type of defense that Josh, what was his name? Boyle? And I'm trying to remember now who our defensive coordinator was last year. That was the type of defense he ran. He ran a defense where he tried to shut down everything and dared you to throw it deep. Yeah, so obviously when you have one of the most accurate deep ball throwers in the NFL, along with two of the fastest receivers in the NFL, you're going to get beat sometimes. And it's not happening as much this year for those two reasons. Number one, going up against a good defense. Number two, running a different kind of offense, changing the scheme up. And I think it's smart, but it looks a little ugly right now. And I know people are thinking, oh, this offense isn't good. This team's no good. Lewis, you've even talked about your concern that the offense is going to take a step back. I think the offense is absolutely going to look different. I think we can tell right now that it's going to look different, but there are reasons. I know some people say, well, why would you go away with what worked? Well, it worked until it didn't work, right? it worked as long as everything was going perfectly in Tua and Tyreek and Waddle and everything was in there perfectly, unless somebody ran just the type of defense to stop it. So I don't want that to happen anymore. Or Tua went out and you had to put in a backup quarterback and they didn't have a prayer. Not a prayer. And then they didn't know what plays to call. And then they were so limited with Skylar and even Teddy. They were just so limited. So in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I have not heard anybody say this. I have not read this anywhere. If somebody has said it, cool. Then we're both thinking the same thing. This is why I think that the Dolphins are changing the offense and going in a different direction. And personally, I think it makes sense because your job in the offseason is to do what? Fix your biggest problems from the year before, right? Improve. So if your number one problem is that your backups came in and couldn't run your offense, you have to fix that. You have to fix that. So that's my opinion on it, and I'll let you guys discuss on whether you think I'm crazy or right or somewhere in between.
I mean, my first question would be, aside from the fact that they're doing the whole Jalen Waddle team and Tyreek Hill team thing, what evidence have you found that they're trying to make these changes?
Sorry, I didn't know I'd be asked questions already. Well, let's start with the talent they got. Yes, they have speed, but so what did they go and do and get more of? They got more speed, more yak, right? And they got A-Chain. They got Barrios, right? They got Chosen. They went and said, you know what? We want to get even faster, but we want to do it with more yak. You could tell by the little bit that you've seen in practice and in the game, you could tell they're focusing a bit more on shorter passes and not so much 10, 12, 15 yards passes, pinpoint accuracy in the middle of the field. I think a lot of that is going to go away some unless the game plan calls for it. I think that's going to go away. Those are some of the reasons for sure. Beyond what I stated before, that I think they're making these changes, or some of the evidence, I should say. What do you think, Duke?
I think they're opening more of the playbook and running some new concepts. I think that's part of what they're doing. Is they're adding plays or utilizing plays that White and Thompson can run. I don't know that Thompson's necessarily a fit for the offense. We know Teddy Bridgewater wasn't. And like you said, I don't think there's any quarterback in the league that can run the type of offense that Tua runs. He's very, very good at it and has been since college. And his manipulation within the pocket of how he uses the mesh point and the RPO stuff, I just think he's just better at it than everybody else, just from experience. And so you're not going to get that kind of thing. And I think we're going to see that come week one. I think we're going to see some of the bread and butter plays that we saw last year, but I think we're going to see some other aspects too. And I believe Mike White has had some experience in this type of system, so he's not completely unfamiliar with it like I think Bridgewater was and Thompson was.
For sure, but he's more familiar with it in the way I think that they're trying to run more of it now versus the way it was run last year. Like he's more familiar with it in the kind of more the San Fran version of it versus what Miami was doing in 2022.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see some of that with Tua as well. But I don't think we're going to see completely going away from it. But I think we're going to see a section of the playbook that will be used for the backup quarterbacks, mainly for Mike White, that he will be able to operate the offense somewhat effectively compared to what Bridgewater would have offered last year. And so I think you're right in that aspect. I don't think it's a complete change to the offense. I think it's just some additions and amendments and things that are going to allow a shift if Tua were to go out.
Lewis.
And I completely, sorry to interrupt, but I do completely agree about the running game. If you want to protect the quarterback and you want to run this offense or run an offense effectively, you need to run the ball more. And I don't think it's a situation where Miami just couldn't necessarily run it effectively. They just didn't run a lot.
Yeah.
And my argument to that is it's not that they need to change the passing offense or take away from the passing offense. They just need to run more plays. So I think part of that falls on the defense. I think if the defense can get off the field more instead of this bend, don't break, Boyer defense that gives up 12 plays and a field goal, we're getting a lot more 3 and outs. We're going to see more plays offensively, and those are going to go to the running backs. And so I'm absolutely down with the running the ball more.
Yeah, and I think that we kind of tend to forget because this whole, by the way, we'll have to touch on the Dalvin Cook thing just a little bit because we finally got a conclusion to that whole saga. But I would like to point out again that the running backs that we have on the roster right now, they lend themselves to being able to run the football. We're acting like because they're not superstar guys, that they're not guys that every household knows. Dalvin Cook, everybody knows Dalvin Cook. Everybody knows him. Everybody knows Ezekiel Elliott, who is now a New England Patriot. But as far as who the guys that are already on the roster, running the football more is absolutely the solution to the problem, I think. I would prefer to be able to keep Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on the field at all times. And even Erica Zunkama, who I just did a show, Fins Nation, I just recorded it. That'll debut tomorrow at 5 a.m. He was excited about the idea of playing on the same field as both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle at the same time, simultaneously. And Cap for Life, good to have you on here. And as for you, Aaron, we will answer your question in due time. Now, back to the running back situation as a whole. So the whole thing with Raheem Mostert, number one, I've talked about this many times before, and this was why I was happy when they re-signed him as it was. With what limited carries that he got, and we've talked about how Dalvin Cook has had over 1,000 yards rushing for the past 4 seasons. He usually averages over 200 carries per season. Raheem Mostert was nowhere near that amount, and he got 861 yards or something to that effect. So if he had gotten the same number of carries that Dalvin Cook usually gets,
he'd have more yards.
He would absolutely have more than 1,000 yards rushing. And and he's not a superstar. He's not a superstar running back that everybody remembers and knows. Now, I feel like
this offense doesn't need a superstar running back. Most offenses don't really need that anymore. Jets are just trying to put on anything they can because they're in an extremely competitive division, extremely competitive conference, and they're just trying to get every little edge they can. You think, well, why aren't we trying to get every little edge we can? Well, it's just certain things make sense for certain teams. But I'm proud to say, Lewis, you can attest to this. I was one of the few that was not on the Cook train from the very beginning, and I stayed consistent and true with that. And I stayed consistent and true that we had the right backfield. And although Cook would have been a decent ad for the right money, we did absolutely not need him. We did not need him. Happy to be in one of that little few percentage that felt that way from the very beginning. It doesn't have to be, I'm not a flip flopper here, anything like that. If you go through my tweets or I don't know, my X's, my posts, whatever the heck you call those things.
Just call them tweets, Ron.
Yeah, if you go through my tweets or you go through every little bit of clips in here, not that anybody would go back and do that, but you can. You'll find nothing but me saying, sure, if we had Cook, that's nice, but he is not needed. So I don't feel any loss. I'd have preferred him not to go to to an AFC East team, sure, but because he's a talented player, I'm not gonna be delusional here. But I feel like we have a really good backfield, and I think that we're going to be impressed with A-Chain, obviously, as he gets going, and Mostert and Wilson.
Well, I want to just point out for the record, I never said the Dolphins needed Dalvin Cook. I was just much more enthusiastic about signing him than you were.
Yeah, you were on the Cook hype train for sure. But you know what? You weren't the only one. Many people were. Duke, I don't really remember where you came down on the whole. You're not a real super excitable guy in most cases, so I'm sure you weren't screaming at the rooftop saying we need Cook. I just didn't remember exactly what your thoughts were on it.
I think Duke will be screaming to the rooftop about Dalton Risner, but go ahead and Dalvin Cook us.
Well, I said on the first show I was on a few weeks ago that I'm all for adding talent. So if they wanted him and they brought him in, I was cool with that. It had to be at their price, and I'm fine with them not going off of that price to go out and get him. My take on running backs is if you think you're a running back away from winning it all, you're not really close to winning it all. It's sad to say, but at this point, it's an ancillary position. It's something you need to have, but like Miami's doing it, it's a position now that you use a committee for and not a bell cow or a single guy to lead the pack, so to speak. I mean, if you're like the Tennessee Titans, you're going to ride Derrick Henry until the wheels fall off. But he's a weapon that's different than everybody else. So, if they added him, great. If they don't, I understand.
He's like the Tyreek Hill of running backs. He makes that big a difference for a team.
Yeah.
Who are we talking about? Dalvin Cook or Derrick Henry?
Derrick Henry.
I'm about to say, like Dalvin Cook. Like,
I just
didn't want him.
I didn't suddenly have an aneurysm, Lewis.
No,
definitely talking about Derrick Henry.
So now, speaking of Henry, I mean, I don't think he's up for sale at this point. But if the Titans start off slow, and they very well could, and they go into the season and they're only a couple wins by the trade deadline, he's a piece I think they could move. Tennessee could move, and if Miami wants him at that point, I'd absolutely be all for it. He changes the dynamic of the offense in a way that no other running back can. He can run the wide zone. He can run anything that Miami runs, and you're just getting a 250-pound tank that runs 4.5. They can do it. So
yeah,
that's a pipe dream and something to think about down the line. But I'm okay with the running back room as it is, simply because I think it may have been Alf even tweeted this earlier today about that's a lot of money for a timeshare back.
Man, for a guy who's going to get like 8 to 12, that he could. Yeah, I mean, he could earn $8 million if he's getting 8 to 12 carries. Not going to earn that $8 million, I'd imagine. I'm not sure what all the stipulations are and the goals he has to hit, but he's probably going to at least get 5 or 6. Yeah, that's a lot of money for a guy that probably would get maybe 30% of the carries in our backfield.
They may be trying to hedge their bets though, because Breece Hall getting injured really wrecked their offense last season.
Absolutely did, and part of that is because they didn't have a quarterback, and they definitely have a better quarterback this year. But absolutely, and who knows what Breece Hall is going to look like when he first comes in too. So, for them, Cook might make a lot more sense, especially in the first 4 to 6 weeks or so, and until Hall can come back more full strength. If he does come back full strength,
yeah, I think their offense is going to be more run centric. I think we're going to see a lot of what we saw from Green Bay with the Jets offense, and mainly because if you listen to the Jets fans on Twitter and the way they talk about it, that I think I saw a tweet today. One guy said that this team is as talented or more talented than the 99 Rams, the greatest show on turf.
Okay.
And I know, and somebody posted a meme of somebody smoking crack, so that's kind of what it amounts to. So, but they're really high on their playmakers. But if you really look at that, that offense, they have one good receiver, and then a bunch of guys that are mostly wide receiver 3s or 4s on other teams. And I know the Jets haven't had, even Miami level Ryan Tannehill quarterback play since Vinny Testaverde, but they've got a good quarterback now, but he's not going to suddenly turn those guys into all pros. And I was listening to a podcast earlier today, and they were talking about Vic Fangio and the way he calls his defense, and he's going to take away your number one option. So that's obviously Garrett Wilson. So what happens when they take him away? Do the Jets really believe that Alan Lazard and Mecole Hardman and Corey Davis, guys who have been on other teams and didn't really do all that well even as a number 2 option, are those guys going to be the ones that just absolutely beat you? And I think when it comes to, at least from Miami's perspective, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see them try to take away Garrett Wilson, and we're going to see a lot of passes to the running backs from Aaron Rodgers. So I think just my take on it is, and I'm probably wrong, but I think they're going to lean on the running back position heavily and not so much trying to pass the ball, because I think, they've got some guys and they believe in their guys, but I think they also understand that their guys are limited. And in the same way, you look at Miami, we're not going to suddenly turn into a running team when you have a guy like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill on the outside.
Yeah.
They're going to get theirs, and rightfully so. So I think it's just the exact opposite. So, it's a good signing for the Jets, and they're going to do well. And I hate it that he went there, but, again, for Miami, just the money wasn't there, and I get it.
If you weren't scared of the Jets before and suddenly you are now because Dalvin Cook is there,
Yeah.
you're putting a lot more faith in Dalvin Cook than I feel like anybody has any right to. So
I just kind of one last. Okay, I'm sorry, Lewis, and then I want to make one final comment about the Jets before we moved on to, I guess, the Falcons game. Go ahead, Lewis. I'm sorry. Continue.
No, I was just going to say that whatever the Dolphins offense is going to be and Devon A-Chain are perfect fit for exactly what they're going to do. Mike McDaniel did not get excited about Devon A-Chain because he wanted Dalvin Cook. It's not like A-Chain was good buddies with Cook and said, hey, come and play with your friend. No, that's not how it works. So they're looking at this situation saying Devon A-Chain is going to add a new dimension to this offense. He was transitioning into the Falcons game. Devon A-Chain was the leading receiver for the Dolphins in the preseason game against the Falcons. It was 4 catches, 41 yards, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So, that was where he did most of his damage. And ironically enough, Eric Ezukanma did most of his damage rushing the football, not catching it. But
that's interesting.
Very topsy-turvy preseason game, but I digress. So go ahead and what was your final thought, Ron?
Yeah, one final thought on the Jets is they have if they have last year's Aaron Rodgers, they have a much worse offensive line than Green Bay had. I don't think you could convince me that Breece Hall's coming back full strength. You definitely can't convince me that Dalvin Cook is better than Aaron Jones. And they pretty much have the same cast of characters besides Garrett Wilson that Rodgers had last year.
At Rodgers' request.
I'm just
at Rodgers' request.
Yes, at Rodgers' request. Oh my God, I need to leave Green Bay because all they give me is a bunch of crappy players. Comes to the Jets. Please give me all the same crappy players. So really, besides Garrett Wilson, I mean, who I'm not even sure at this point, I don't want to say he's a top 10 receiver yet. Maybe he'll be there this year. He is very talented. I just think it's a little overblown. I think it's a lot overblown. And then we go to the defensive side. Man, they faced a lot of it was like what Miami did a few years back when they had an excellent defensive output for that year, but they faced a ton of crappy second string and backup quarterbacks, and the Jets did that same thing last year. They don't have that luxury this year. Look at that schedule. Unless some luck breaks their way with injury, they're going to get a much, much tougher quarterback schedule this year, especially in those first 4, 5, 6 games. So I think the hype train is a bit gone too far on the Jets. So we shall see. People are sleeping on the Dolphins again. That's fine. That's what we want them doing. Let them sleep on the Dolphins. It doesn't matter to me.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into just a quick review of that Falcons game. Duke, we haven't heard from you on your thoughts. Now, Ron and I kind of did a little bit on post-game regarding what we saw from that game, but I want to hear from you. Like, did you rewatch it? Did you watch it live? What were your initial thoughts on what you had seen?
Well, I watched it early Saturday morning because I caught the NFL Network broadcast. I don't get the preseason stuff. So through NFL.com. So I watched it, and I've tried to go back and watch it a few times and watch particularly the trench play. Since I don't have the all 22, I don't get to watch all the extra stuff.
Somehow Josh Houts and Chris Kaufman bribed the right people. They have it. I don't know how they got it, but they do. But
so I thought Austin Jackson played well. I didn't really see a lot of misses with him. I think he tends to play over his feet a little bit, get slightly off balance, and I think that will come with better hand placement, better timing with his hands. But I thought he did well. I thought the guys we expect to see on the offensive line, which there are really 4 guys with Robert Jones, Liam Eichenberg, Austin Jackson, and Isaiah Wynn, and I thought they all played well. So I don't think anybody was just really, really bad.
I thought that Wynn looked more like what you want a guard to look like when he was playing than Eichenberg did. I'm not saying Eichenberg was bad, but when I looked at the reps that Wynn was playing, I was like, okay. I mean, he had a few really nice blocks on some runs. Like that's what you want it to look like. A few that I've never really seen Eichenberg ever have. Yeah. And all the chances he's gotten, I saw Wynn do it 2 or 3 times in a few snaps. That's just my opinion on the competition there.
I think Wynn's going to be the starting left guard.
Yeah, I agree. I think that needs to happen.
Are we sleeping on Robert Jones at all? He apparently wrecked some folks in that game.
He played well, but I mean, Isaiah Wynn just he looked the part. I think I've got a kind of a weird take on this, and I mentioned this on the Finsider earlier this week. In a comment was, I mean, there's teams out there that need some pieces, and Miami could stand to get rid of some pieces. And I'm not talking about massive, hauls here, but I think they should look at trading Liam Eichenberg for anything they can get. And the reason I say that is because at this point, Isaiah Wynn is your starting left guard. I think even if you don't keep him around past this year, I don't know that how much of a future they have with Liam Eichenberg, unless you just think he's going to get it this year or if they keep him around next year. But I look at the upside of, all right, what do you have in him versus what do you get in Robert Jones? And I don't think you want either one of those guys playing tackle, although they've had experience at tackle. I think Liam Eichenberg, they wanted to move to center, and he did some of that in OTAs, but I think Robert Jones gives you versatility to play either guard position. I don't know that you get that with Liam Eichenberg. So if draft position, draft status was not a factor, and these were just guys you picked off the street in a pickup game, so to speak, I mean, I think Robert Jones is – it depends how many offensive linemen you keep. I'm keeping 8 because there's so many other positions that you want to keep talented players there. So if you've got your starting 5 with Armstead, Wynn, Williams, Hunt, and Austin Jackson. Kendall Lamb is your swing tackle. I can't think of his name, but the guy from the Jets, Feeney, he's 7th. Who's the 8th guy? Well, if you keep 9, you're keeping Robert Jones and you're keeping Liam Eichenberg. If you're only keeping 8, I'm keeping Robert Jones over Liam Eichenberg. And that's just my take on it. Now, the Dolphins probably won't think that way because he was a second-round pick that they traded up for.
You know how Greer is. He's stubborn on those picks he makes, especially if they're higher.
If it's a situation where, all right, well, another team is a much dire situation on the offensive line, and there's a couple out there, and they're willing to offer a late-round pick for Liam Eichenberg. Would you do it? I mean, I would.
I mean, if they can get something for Liam Eichenberg, I'm absolutely pulling the trigger at this point because nothing that I've seen Liam Eichenberg do is convincing me that I want to keep him around. That said, and I know that this is going to be very bizarre to say, and I still can't believe I'm saying it to this day, all this stubbornness that Chris Greer has had about keeping his guys in the very, very tail end of their rookie contracts, it seems like all these picks are starting to get their heads together. Austin Jackson finally looks competent.
I'm waiting on regular season games before I can. And same with Noah. I see what we're seeing, but I need to see some regular season action.
Like Noah Ganogany. How many times has Alf crowned him already as the player of the game for practice, and he had a good game against the Falcons too? I'm just like,
let's see how it goes against Keenan Allen.
I mean, I think with Austin Jackson, I think it would have started coming together last year for him. He just missed time.
The 14 snaps, Ron. It's
the
14 snaps.
Those glorious 14 snaps
so
against the Patriots.
But if you look at him, he looks in better shape. So the athleticism's there, and I think you can give some offensive lineman time. It's just the left guard position. I think Isaiah Wynn's got it. I think and they're probably going to keep 9 offensive linemen anyway. But I'm not. I would want to take another skill position player, maybe a running back, maybe a tight end, even another wide receiver or a defensive player. But as far as what else I saw from that game, I thought Brandon Peely flashed a little bit. I can't say for certainty that the 4th and or 5th defensive tackle that we need is on the team right now. I didn't really see anything else from anybody else. Channing Tindall flashed quite a bit. He looks good out there.
I thought Cam Smith looked pretty good.
Yeah, the secondary I'm not too worried about. I mean, I think it's going to be a dogfight for those last few positions. Keydron Smith I thought played well. Is he one of those guys that, if we don't see much of him the rest of the way, then they're hiding him. He may take it over Elijah Campbell, but I think Trill Williams has got the inside track for that fourth safety position. Elijah Campbell is kind of fighting for it, and I think they keep a fifth one, particularly with guys like Holland and Williams, who have cornerback experience and can come in and play man if they need to. So I think they keep 5 corners and 5 safeties overall.
Yeah. Usually for special teams too, you'll see teams do that.
So, I wasn't too worried about the outcome of the game. The quarterback play left something to be desired. But
we knew that was going to happen.
I think Mike White, he was pretty good from the 20 to the 10, and he got inside the 10. Now, I was told that they had done 0 red zone install yet, which feels kind of late to me, but I'm not when do you schedule what install in your in your practice expert? That's for damn sure. But that's what I had heard, that they hadn't done any red zone install, and so once they got into the red zone, it was a bit of a street ball situation, perhaps. But yeah, it looked kind of ugly in the end zone.
Well, and again, this is essentially just a glorified practice, and it's getting guys together that probably aren't going to play together at all on any given Sunday. So if that's Mike White in there with starting offensive line, starting running backs, and Tyreek and Jalen out there at receiver, it's going to look a lot different. So I'm not too worried about necessarily the results. The other thing that I'm going to take away from this, and I know we talked on Ezekama and he played well, is I'm an Elijah Higgins fan, and I think he's going to have a role on the team this year and moving forward. But I noticed at one point he lined up in the backfield. I think Tyler Croft did as well. But Alec Ingold they can save $3 million against the cap if he's not on the team this year.
Oh,
no. They're not cutting him.
He's like the second best fullback in the league.
I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying if they get to a point where a guy like Elijah Higgins shows, hey, I can do the same thing. And we're talking about a guy that played like 25 snaps a game last year with Ingold. So that's about what he averaged per game. And I don't think it's going to happen. But if he comes in and kind of says, well, we can do this, I'm just saying.
Chris, did you have dinner yet tonight? Like, are you feeling okay?
I'm fine.
I'm worried about you.
I'm not getting rid of Ingold. I'm just saying.
I don't know where you live, but I'm gonna have a health check done from the police just to make sure you're all right.
No, as a matter of fact,
I'm just kidding.
I just got done. I just walked, just did my evening cardio. But
I know you're healthier than me. You guys should do a health check on me one day.
I'm just saying that I don't think it'll happen, and I think they like Ingold, and they have a role set aside for him. But if somebody comes over and can take that away from him, it's not out of the question. And I think we're going to see that possibly with Elijah Higgins moving forward in the future.
I think Elijah Higgins, who he's replacing, I know this sounds silly because I'm talking about a dude who had never played a snap. But what they're doing with Elijah Higgins is they're kind of prepping him for the backup fullback role that Lovett can't seem to, happen because
he's gone.
Yeah, I know he's gone because he always gets hurt. He's just never available. But they need somebody. At least before, for a bit, they were like, well, we can always pull him if he's on the practice squad. We could pull him off if we had to. Blah blah blah. In case Alec Ingold got hurt, you can't just. Oh, now we got to scrap all these plays because we don't have Alec Ingold. Again, you want things to be done by scheme and system, not be player specific. You want the players to enhance and make that scheme and that system and those plays better, but you don't want a whole bunch of 80% of your offense to be about, well, I have this guy, so I'm going to run this offense, and then as soon as ABCD guy's not there, you're completely screwed and you can't do it. I think it just more evidence that goes into what I'm saying about McDaniel realizes that he was too player specific in his schemes and his play calling and his play design, and he needs to get away from that and just let those players enhance what he's trying to do, regardless of the players. he's kind of I think he's taking a lesson from Fangio, because Fangio's system is like, dude, you give me players like Miami has, my system is really going to be awesome. But you know what? If you give me a bunch of guys that are kind of mid or average, I'm still going to run a great system, and it's still going to work because of the system I have and the way we do it. And I think that McDaniel's like, man, that's what I need to do on offense. That's what needs to happen. So I think Higgins being back there as a fullback is that same concept. All right, if Ingold goes, then we're going to throw Higgins in there, and he's going to run these fullback plays. Is it as good? Well, of course not. Of course it's not, right? Is Robbie Chosen going in instead of Waddle is good? No, of course not. But that's just how it works. When somebody gets hurt, you get a downgrade, but you still need to be able to run the offense. And I think that personally, I think that's what part of that is right there.
And I want to touch on Aaron's question, since we're in that talking a little bit about it. With his questions, what position is that's not O-line is the most suspect? And I'm going to go with the tight end room.
For sure, man. That's the easy one.
I know we've said before, or I've said before, that I don't think this team is going to use tight ends. They're not going to be massive receiving threats. They're not going to lean on them in that regard. But it's the weakest room on the roster. I mean, the starting offensive line right now, in my opinion, the weakest link's Austin Jackson. I think the other four are solid to great players. So I don't think the offensive line is necessarily a massive weakness. It's going to be the injury.
And we have a pretty decent swing tackle too.
Yeah. So
you have a lot of faith in Isaiah Wynn, Duke. I don't know.
I'm telling you, man. I agree with
at left guard. He's gonna be good.
He's going to be solid, man. I'm telling you, it's going to be such an improvement over Ike. I agree.
We're not going to be talking about, the second coming of Alan Faneca or anything here, but we're talking about, he's going to play that position well. And it just has to be, it just has to be above average, or even average at that point.
How about we just take average instead of
the question's going to be, all right, Teron Armstead's going to miss time. Isaiah Wynn has got an injury history. He's going to miss time. So who fills in for those positions? And I think right now, Kendall Lamb's done well so far in camp. I think if Wynn were to go, if both of those guys were to go down, you're looking at, Lamb and either Jones or Eichenberg in that position. So it's not necessarily it's going to hurt then, but it's not a weakness overall with the starting guys. So, and really, if you look at it, the offensive line depth across the league is just bad. I mean, there's some good offensive lines out there, but there's a lot of offensive lines that are in that kind of 10 to 20 range, where I think Miami kind of is now, that if a guy or a couple of guys go down, they're bottom of the league. And that's not just us. So we're just used to it. We're familiar with the bottom tier offensive line, but I think
at least we're not the Jets.
Yeah, I mean,
they're bottom tier with their starters.
Yeah, they're looking kind of rough too. So, but I think tight end is the iffiest position on the team, just all the way around. I think they're going to be adequate blockers, but I don't know, man. I don't know if anybody's going to set themselves apart on this roster.
What Duke said.
Yeah, I mean, Higgins might.
Higgins is the only guy. Alf said it, and I'm stealing it verbatim. Higgins is the only upside tight end on this roster. Case closed. He's the only shot you have of somebody doing something to be like, damn, that dude can play. I'm telling you, it's not going to come from any other tight end in that room. It's just not.
No, Durham Smythe is very Deion Sims-like. He's not a guy that you really want to count on to do anything other than block and maybe occasionally catch a pass or two. It's not something that you want as your number one. But I guess the Dolphins like him a lot more than we do, and I don't get it. But
no, I'm not against Smythe especially for what they want to do.
I'm not against Smythe because I don't like Smythe. I just don't think of Smythe
is what he is, right? He is what he is. The Dolphins know what he is. They're going to use him in a particular way. He'll probably catch like 20 passes this season or something. Maybe 18 to 20 passes.
20?
Yeah.
20? No, not
for the
20.
Season? Bro, that's like 1.25 a game. Relax.
No, Smythe is not catching 20 passes.
He's going to catch 20 passes.
I think he had 20 last year.
Yeah, he's going to catch like 20 passes. He's the starting tight end. He's gonna be on the field almost every single offensive snap, mostly blocking, but he will go out and he'll go out and sneaky, underneath the linebackers, catch a few passes here and there. He'll catch 20 passes.
He had 15 catches on 20 targets.
Yeah, he'll catch like 20 passes this year. That's it. I mean, it's not like I'm saying the guy's going to catch 100, Lewis. It's like 20 is not a lot in 17 games.
Already had more snaps than Gesicki.
Can I include? All right, we're going to go all the way to the Super Bowl. So we're talking about 20 games. He's going to catch a pass a game. There you go. He'll catch. I'm going to laugh when Smythe catches the winning pass in the Super Bowl, the winning touchdown. Well, that's what's going to happen. Just because you dog on the guy, say he can't catch 20 passes.
If you're gonna do that, you better get on with BetUS or something, man.
Yeah. What's the over under? Can we get some over under on what's the?
Oh, no, excuse me. It's Better Edge. Better Edge.
No, not Better Edge. What's the other one? The one that
it doesn't matter. 5 Reasons Sports uses Better Edge.
No. I'm talking about for the players though. Can't you pick?
Oh, that's Prize Picks, but Prize Picks won't have that.
They won't have Smythe.
They won't have Smythe catching a Super Bowl winning.
No, I just meant
pass.
Like for a week, like it'll be over under like a pass or something. I'll take it every week.
They only put people that are regular contributors.
I don't think the tight ends are going to catch a lot of passes. I think where we're going to see an increase in volume. I think wide receiver 3 is going to get some more, whoever that is.
It's a mixture. Barrios, Chosen, and
I mean, because I think if I can look at it real quick, in terms of targets last season, I think Gesicki was 3rd with 52 and Trent Sherfield was 4th with 51. So I think the third receiver is going to get a little bit more than 51 that Trent Sherfield did and take away from that what Gesicki would have got. I think we're going to see a lot more catches by the running backs, mainly because I think Mike McDaniel is going to be into his ear saying, listen, if it is not there, I don't care how buffed up you are. I don't care how much jiu-jitsu or judo or whatever it is you've been taking. Dump the ball off. And we saw that the other night. You dumped it off to Devon Achane, and he caught the ball.
4 catches, 41 yards.
He caught the ball on that one. It was on the right sideline, and there was no one around. And he had a first down by the time he blinked. It was just amazing how fast he was.
Did I not tell you, right? Like Lewis, and I don't know if you were on the episode, Chris. I don't think you were. Did what Chris just described to you, Lewis, not exactly what I described like 2 months ago about Achane, and the way he is so quick when he gets the ball and runs, and especially when he catches that ball like in the flat or something. Like there is zero hesitation. That guy takes off so fast after he gets the ball. There is just zero.
He takes off so fast that he sometimes misses his blocks and gets smushed.
That is very possible. Like he could absolutely outrun his blocks.
I don't even care. I mean, if you're catching a check down, you're not going to need blocks. I mean, that is simply there. And I know it's funny that that check downs get a bad rap sometimes because we hear about, this quarterback's a check down guy or whatever.
Tua was a check down quarterback for a long time in there.
Justin Herbert.
No,
Dude, he is a check down quarterback. Check the numbers.
Tua has never been a check down quarterback. He threw short.
People said he was.
Oh, it said he was. He threw short. A check down was like what we saw with Chad Henne and whoever.
Check down Chad.
It's like you drop back, and you've got other options, and you choose the safe dump-off option. And Tua never does. He'll stand there and hold the ball like that sack that Mike White took. And I don't know what was going on there, but you just hold the ball and then take a sack.
Yeah.
I think they're working in some of that changes to the offense where they're going to give him with Mostert and with Achane, where they're going to give him an option, say, listen, if it is not there, if your first, second, third reads are not there, get it to those guys. They're fast. They're playmakers. And you stay upright. And that's what we're going to see. So I think we're going to see, I don't know how many the running backs caught last year. I want to say like somewhere around 150 total targets. I think you're going to see that increase significantly. And they're going to weaponize the running backs in the passing game more so than they did last year. So, yeah, I don't think the tight ends are going to matter in the passing game in the sense of targets or receptions. Maybe in the red zone, but yeah, we're going to see an increase with those running backs, and I hope that Achane is that guy.
I'm sure he will be. I'm fully convinced. I mean, even all the players are all excited about what it is that he can offer. Like when they talk about how impressive he is and the fact that they consider him to be a rising star in the making, they'll say nice things. I pointed this out before. They'll say nice things about Noah Benogany and that he's learning and he's starting to get the scheme and all that stuff. They have never said Noah Benogany is going to be a star in the NFL. Jalen Waddle's basically come out and said, no, you don't understand. Devon Achane is going to be something special.
What was it he said? He said he's one of them ones.
One of them ones. Yeah, that's the exact terminology. I'm not hip. I'm not hip with the kids of today. So, but in any case, we got about 10-ish minutes left. So, Houston Texans. Or are we looking at this as the dress rehearsal? Do we see some Tua this next week?
I think so. I mean, that's kind of how they've done it now. Which I mean, it's just been a few seasons with the 3 preseason. Oh, is this the second or third?
This is the second season we've done 3 preseason games.
Last year, that's how you kind of saw teams do it. What was the second game was the dress rehearsal. I mean, it's hard to know now. Preseason it's really getting downplayed and changed. We've eliminated a game. We watched the Rams not play a damn starter one and go win the Super Bowl. It's so hard to know what teams will do, but I think we'll see a series or two. I don't even know if we'll see Waddle at all. I don't think we will. Maybe we'll see Tyreek for a series. Some of the defensive guys for a series. That's my thought on it. I think it'll be extremely limited. Just let them I think they would what they'll do more than anything is it's not going to be as much about like the playing as the lead up to the game. Right. And all the things they're doing just to kind of feel that what it feels like on when you're going to play a real game. I think they're going to want to get because then you're not going to play them likely in the 3rd preseason game. So you're going to have no 3rd preseason game. And then you're going to skip a week. So you're going to have several weeks before week 1. So I think they'll just try and get them that feel of like what a game is like when it starts, et cetera, and the whole routine and all of that. But I think as far as the actual gameplay, it'll be very limited. What do you think, Duke?
I think if I remember, Tua didn't play until the 3rd preseason game last year. That was the one where the first play of the game was the deep shot to Tyreek. And then the second play was the shot across the middle that went like 20 yards. So they may wait until week 3 to get to be the warm-up game simply because it is closer to the regular season. So I don't know. I'm personally just like, let's keep these guys healthy. I mean, I'm of that mindset. Like we don't need guys out there, especially the main guys, get some of your either not fringe roster spots, but kind of your guys like Eichenberg and Jackson they need the reps at those positions. They're fighting for a starting spot. Let them get the reps, but Tua, the receivers, Mostert, the starting corners. We don't need those guys in there. Like if I don't see Javon Holland or Jalen Phillips the entire preseason, I'm fine with that. So I just. The main thing is just with the joint practices and with this game is we're probably going to see CJ Stroud a lot. I'm hoping we get to see Will Anderson versus Austin Jackson. That's even though he's a rookie playing his 2nd preseason game.
Yeah, he's still Will Anderson.
he's still going to get after it, and if he's a guy that they're counting on to be a cornerstone piece for them moving forward. So if Austin Jackson goes out there and plays against him and holds his own, does well, that's a good thing. If they allow CJ Stroud to go out there, and assuming, we've got a few guys that are, if it's all your backups, but if you got guys like Ogba played this past week, Tyndall, Igbenogany, Eli Apple, Deshaun Elliott. I mean, if these guys are getting lit up by CJ Stroud, then there's going to be a level of concern there. And I don't expect Vic Fangio to come out and throw some new wrinkle to the Texans in week 2 of preseason. But if you can't play your base defense and you're struggling, and especially I don't even know who they have at receiver at this point. So, I just want to see some growth there from the players that need to see some growth. stay healthy across the board, and that's about it.
Well,
maybe one of those fringe guys step up and earn a roster spot.
Well, to answer your question, Duke, the question you didn't necessarily ask, but I'm going to tell you anyway. The wide receivers that are on the Houston Texans include the following, and let's see if anybody reminds you of anybody. Alex Bachman, Noah Brown, Jalen Camp, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Adam Humphreys, Xavier Hutchinson, Johnny Johnson III, John Mechie III, Steven Sims, Jared Wayne, Robert Woods.
So some of those younger guys I'm familiar with, Collins and Mechie and Tank Dell. And there was another one you mentioned.
Robert Woods at the very end.
No, there was another one at the beginning you mentioned, I recall from draft stuff.
Alex Bachman?
No, it was the guy after him, I believe. But anyways.
Noah Brown?
Yeah. Didn't he
play?
That's
a 7-year veteran.
I just remember the name. So anyway, I mean, that's a team that could use Cedric Wilson Jr. Just saying.
I would be all for trading him at this point. At the Dolphins, that's the only way that they get out of his contract a year early if they manage to trade him.
But I mean, these guys should not be, with the exception of, well, I mean, Tank Dell is going to be a problem. I think he's a smaller guy, but I liked him a lot. I think he's going to present a problem for the league in a couple of years. So outside of him and Mechie, I'm not too worried about this receiving core. And if those guys are lighting up our guys, particularly Igbenogany and Eli Apple, then yeah, I'll start to worry, because that's depth that we're kind of counting on at this point. And so those guys should not be winning. And I'm talking, when I say, you know, I'm not talking about these guys are playing a deep zone and they catch a ball in front of them kind of stuff. I mean, like if this is a match concept and they're supposed to play in man and they're just getting beat left and right, I don't foresee that happening. But that's going to be what that's what I'm going to be watching for. Offensively, I you know, our guys should beat their guys, but you know, we're talking about the backups playing. So
we don't even know who's going to play at this point.
I don't think the starters are going to play much. That's just my take on it. I think it's going to be week 3 against, I think, Jacksonville or whoever, Tampa, I don't know. And then and that's when we're going to see Tua and Hill and those guys. So yeah, this week's just going to be another week like Atlanta, in my opinion.
We shall see. Let's end the show with just a few questions. So we already answered Aaron's question. What position on the team that's not offensive line looks suspect? We mentioned that the tight end room was the answer to that. Cap for life. Did Debo, Jordan Poyer, Bobby Wagner, and Dalvin Cook all try to use Miami for leverage? No. Jordan Poyer legitimately wanted to be a Dolphin. The Dolphins did not give him an offer that was worth mentioning. Dalvin Cook wanted to be a Miami Dolphin. They did not give him an offer worth mentioning. Certainly nowhere near what the Jets ultimately gave him. As for Bobby Wagner and Debo Samuel, those were pipe dreams. I don't think there was ever actually any shot of them joining the Dolphins, to be perfectly honest. So that's a moot point. Stetson O says, don't sleep on Chris Brooks. So he's a big beefy back that had.
I was really impressed with him. I really liked. I think we talked about it in the post game show. I really liked what I saw from Brooks a lot. I think they're gonna. I know somebody asked, are we gonna keep 5 running backs? Because I think they're thinking about
that. Was also Cap for life.
Yeah, Brooks. Honestly, I think they stash Brooks. I think you probably won't even see a lot from him. They're gonna cut him and try and stash him.
I'm going to play GM again for a moment. I think that the Atlanta game was a showcase for Myles Gaskin. I think he is somebody that they want to trade. And if that's the case, then Chris Brooks, I think, makes the roster.
I don't know, Duke. You know what? The honest truth is that if Gaskin keeps playing stuff like this, and every time we saw him even last season, it's like we all think that Gaskin's done. He's not going to play anymore. And then when he gets on the field, he always breaks like 1 or 2 big ones just to remind you he's there. So he'll
do that, and he did that. But the thing is usually when you see guys get a lot of run in preseason, it's either rookies that you're wanting to see something from, young players like Tyndall that you're wanting to see something from, or Igbenogany, something that you're trying to learn something from. That with Myles Gaskin, he's been around a while. Yeah. So this is not a guy like, well, what can he offer? You kind of already know what he's offering. So a guy like that, yeah, he has to play in preseason because somebody does. But we didn't see Ahmed play hardly at all.
Yeah, I agree.
And we know they kind of like him. He's stuck around. So he came originally from San Francisco. So he's familiar with all of that. Maybe I'm wrong again, but I think that's my thing is, hey, we're showcasing this guy. Hey, look what he can do. We'll take a 2025 seventh off your hands for him, kind of thing. So we're not talking about a massive haul here, but this is like we've got talent on the roster, and we're going to have to trim the roster, and we're going to lose guys that we potentially don't want to lose. So it comes down to, well, do we want to keep Chris Brooks, who is a rookie, who we think can offer something, or do we want to keep a guy like Gaskin, who we kind of already know what he has? We don't really want to cut both. So, hey, let's get something for him. So you showcase him in preseason, which is why I said that about Kedron Smith. He played like 30-some snaps and looked pretty good. If he comes in this game and plays like 15 snaps and you don't see him in week 3 of the preseason, they're stashing him on the practice squad. They don't want anybody else to see what he has to offer. So that's kind of been the MO of every coach that Miami's had for years, and I can see that. So I don't know. They saw all they needed to see from Ahmed. He played like 3 snaps or something. I think he caught a pass. I didn't see him run the ball at all. So yeah, I think Ahmed's safely on the roster over Myles Gaskin, and I think they want to get rid of Myles Gaskin in a trade. So
I feel
not that they will, but that's what they want.
I feel like listen, they were able to Chris Greer was able to get something out of Kalen Ballage. So if he really wants to trade Myles Gaskin, I'm sure that he could find somebody who'd want him. So
maybe, I don't know. A lot of running backs out there that are Myles Gaskin.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with Duke. The only thing that makes sense of why they ran him out there so much at the beginning was a little bit of a showcase. And then I also agree with Duke that I don't think anybody's going to trade for him.
All right, so let's go ahead and finish up here. John S. is very salty about the Dalvin Cook thing, I think. So we were relying on A-Chain, who averaged 2.5 yards per carry gross. That's in the Falcons game. He didn't average very many rushing yards, but again, he was the leading receiver, so keep that in mind. If you're all in, you're all in. Haggling over $3 million for a running back like Cook, get out of my life with that. So he's one of those folks who I understandably looks at Dalvin Cook as a very, very valuable piece on an offense. I get that. I do. I really do, dude. But let's be clear about something. Using the 2.5 yards per carry average like that, by the time A-Chain was actually in
somebody
the game,
watched the box score and not the game.
But
learn ball, bro.
Thanks. But the thing is that by the time A-Chain was in the game, Austin Jackson was already done for the day. So it was now who exactly? I don't even remember.
Bunch of guys, most of them who
Cedric
won't even be on the team.
So, bunch
of guys who won't even be on the team. But that's, again, watch the box score, not the game. If you watch the game, you're not saying stuff like that. If you watch the game and you are saying stuff like that, then you clearly don't even know what you're looking like. You should probably follow a different sport.
Well,
strong words from Mr. Cannon.
The other thing about the Dalvin Cook contract situation is, Miami's got a little over $13 million in cap space, and they can use that however they need to. But they're going into next season with $30 million in the hole,
at least.
So they're going to have to make some moves, and you can use that cap space one of two ways: is you can use it on guys you already have on the roster, and maybe. So, and I've heard this from other podcasts, so I don't want to kind of steal their thunder or anything. But if you're re-signing guys, you can use some of that money now and save the cap hit for next year, such as Christian Wilkins, Connor Williams, Robert Hunt, Zach Sealer. We've got a number of guys that we want to keep, and you don't figure Dalvin Cook's going to be on the team next year, unless he just wants to be. And I don't think they would have offered him a multi-year deal. So, you save that money and you say, well, we're willing to take you, but for a limited amount. And we're not going over that amount because, number one, you're only going to get those 12, maybe 15 carries a game. You're not getting a lot in a timeshare that Miami's going to run. We're still going to be a pass-centric offense. And two, we got a guy in Christian Wilkins who's a cornerstone player, a young player, and we need to re-sign him. And that's going to take a lot of money, and we don't want that on a rental back. So
Yeah.
I get the stance, and I get John S.'s point with, you're haggling for a premier player for a small amount of
But I
cap
don't
space.
think he's a premier player anymore. That's the thing. And I think
Well-
the NFL pretty much just said that he's not. And the Jets, again, are desperate. They're desperate to make a splash. They're desperate to make all this work. They're desperate to get to the playoffs for the first time and who knows how long, like the longest streak ever. They're desperate. That's why they're paying this money. If he was a premier player, he'd already be signed. If he was a premier player, he'd probably be in Miami right now. I just don't think he's a premier player anymore. I think the NFL just stated that.
And if Miami wasn't, so far in the hole for the cap space next year, it wouldn't have been a problem. If they were only, say, $3 million in the hole where they can maneuver and get around, I think Cook's here and they would have paid him what they wanted to pay him. It's just the fact that they're limited in cap space for the future, and they've got guys that they need to re-sign for the future that they need that money for. So that's what it was. This was not we could have had a back for slightly $3 million. It's we need money to sign Christian Wilkins and Robert Hunt and guys like that who are going to be a part of this team 5 years from now, where Dalvin Cook is not, and that $3 million could come in for that. So that's what I think. It's not about the money that they want right now. It's the fact that they're essentially penny pinching at this point and trying to figure out next year, and then after that, it's going to be fine for a couple of years.
All righty. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Folks, thank you all so much for joining us for this show. We've got a lot to look forward to as the Houston Texans play. I believe it's Saturday against the Miami Dolphins, right?
Correct.
So, yeah, it's like the schedule's so wonky, and I have to be ready for it.
It's preseason, It's always kind of all over the place.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and remember, everybody, You Break Wheel Fix is the place you go for all your wheel repair or refinishing services, or if you need to give your ride a new look. 305-748-0112 is the number you call, or you can go to youbreakwheelfix.com and prizepicks.com. Use that promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. They are our sponsors. We are very happy to have them, and they help us to continue doing what we do every day and every week on this show and others. So, with all that said, everybody, thank you all so much for listening. We will see you all next week for another episode of Pulse of Fins Nation. And tomorrow morning, 5 a.m., Fins Nation, Eric Ezunkama special will be ready for you to listen to. Good night, everybody.